I'm very pleased Pam on here as well as a member of our work group. And I thought we'd just jump right in. You guys know we this week announced that we were moving into this second phase in terms of meaningful modification of our stay-at-home order. In that second phase, we look forward to putting out a guidance this Thursday to allow people to make modifications, not just in the retail sector, but substantively in your sector, the manufacturing sector, and the logistics sector to support our retailers so that we could begin to see some renewed economic activity. You guys also may have heard we're looking at different regions and creating some variability based upon conditions and criteria in those regions. And so what I love about this group and why I'm so grateful to all of you is not only the timeliness as we're putting together these final drafts on the guidelines, but also the regionality of those of you that are joining us here today, and the opportunity to talk to you not just sectorally in terms of your needs and your workforce, but also from a regional perspective, talking about what's proximate to you in terms of supports and issues of concern that we also may be able to advance or at least address. So again, thank you all so much. And in the spirit of recognition of Pamela's leadership, Pamela, maybe it'd be great just to hear from you. As you made clear to all of us, you have been able to operate a second generation business, but with employees now you're not all of them obviously coming to work. You're still sort of holding on. I'm curious to learn more about your particular circumstances, and maybe you can sort of contextualize the challenges you see it, particularly in your leadership role as it relates to manufacturing in the state.
Oh, well, thank you for inviting me here. And so we produce industrial automation equipment. We make linear and rotary actuators. Fancy way of saying we help things move back and forth and around. So yeah, my plant is in Pittsburgh, California, outside of San Francisco. I've got about a third of my staff on premise and about 2/3 are remote. So that's, I think what we're seeing in terms of the challenges is we're very lucky. We have machinery that's very new, that has a lot of technology. And so we're able to run our production, what's called like lights out or automatic. So we're in cell production, one worker can run multiple machines. But not every facility is capitalized that way, especially smaller manufacturers. And so one of the things I think about as we are released and non-essential manufacturing can go back to business at some point, we're essential, but not everybody is deemed that in the state, is that, machinery and processes are fixed, right? We didn't put our machinery in place with social distancing in mind. And especially for some smaller facilities, this is very expensive. These machines are hardwired. They might be on stabilizer pads, those type of things. So enforcing social distancing sometimes can be a bit of a challenge because of the way the machines are physically set, or how much actual interface with the operators the machines take. And I know we have some other machinists here on the call today. So I think that's one challenge to think about, is there's only, sometimes we can't physically easily change the manufacturing environment.
That's great. I'm sitting 6 feet and 2 inches away from Dr. Angel, who's shaking her head. It's very, very helpful. It's a profoundly important reminder of the world that you're in. By the way, Pamela, just briefly, because you're in the essential side, but you still had a significant decline in business despite being essential nonetheless, right?
Right, because not all of our customer base, not 100% of our customer base is essential. I think we also struggle because we sell globally and across the country. Every state and county has different guidance. So not every one of our customers is deemed essential. So we are opening, we are open. We serve a lot of our customer base is medical, lab and medical, as well as we have defense. But because it's uneven across the country, it has created issues for us. It actually, same with competition. Some of our competition is now in states that are opening up a little faster than ours. And so that puts us at a disadvantage as well, because we aren't just competing here in the Bay Area, we are competing against the country.
Thank you for that important point to remind us as well. Thank you, Pam. Will, you've been working, what, 14 plus years in your current employer, is that right?
Yes, and currently a shop steward at my facility with the Machinists and Aerospace Union. Been working through the pandemic as an essential worker, and we've been doing pretty good at my facility. They have really gone over and above to put in safety measures to keep us safe, as far as the social distancing, masks, disinfectants, sanitizer. One issue that a lot of folks may not think about when you talk about social distancing, breaks and lunches, your lunchroom capacity. When everybody's together for breaks and lunches is a real important and critical place where that social distancing can be overlooked. But we've been doing very well.
And well, was there ever a point in time where that protective gear and sanitation, I mean, where you guys were challenged, or have you been well resourced from day one?
We've been pretty well resourced. We have had some times where we were running short, but we've been getting a steady supply of PPE, and it really hasn't impacted our business at all.
In terms of guidance, as we look to more granularly put out the guidance, in terms of your experience and your particular expertise, is there something you want to highlight or something you want to caution us about? Do you think it's important to be prescriptive, or are you concerned we could be overly prescriptive? Do you believe you guys need more flexibility, or do you need more support? What's your sense of where we should go as we roll these out?
Well, my sense and my experience working through this pandemic, the areas that I found that was a struggle was some of the protocols that are put in place don't necessarily make it to the production floor. Meaning management has their protocols that they have to go through, but that information is not shared with the employee. And it's a safety thing, and it also creates transparency where everybody feels comfortable with the plan going forward in the facility in case there is something that happens, someone tests positive, that the employee also know what the protocols are and can hold everybody to be held accountable for making sure that those protocols are followed for everyone's protection. And that's something that I don't see happening right now.
I
really do think that's something that really needs to take place. You're asking people to come back to work. We've been bombarded with coronavirus for months now, and people are really concerned and scared. There's a lot of people scared to actually come back to work, and we're dealing with that at our facility. So I think the more information that's shared with the employees from management, transparency will go a long way to make everybody comfortable about returning to work and moving forward through this pandemic.
Appreciate that. Well, thank you for that. Susanna, you've got an interesting background and also just an interesting business, from swimwear to military support. Tell us about what you're experiencing and how you're faring.
one of the companies, or half of the company, does contracts with DLA for the physical fitness uniform for the armed forces. So that's been great. We were able to save a third of the employees to work because they were essential business. That was wonderful. But we had to lay off all of the other sewers, mainly, or design room for the clothing line. And some of the sewers we were able to bring back to produce masks for the PPE program for Los Angeles. So that was great. But we're lucky we don't have as many employees as you guys do, so we can keep the distancing. We clean everything in the morning when we come in, all of the common areas. Everyone has a mask. We don't use the gloves because each of employee works on its own within the cutting room, sewing room. But the greatest challenge for my industry has been the manufacturing and the small boutiques being closed, the clothing, and how do you manage to reopen that? That's going to be the new norm, and how are we going to do that? You know, and so many of my orders have been canceled. I have 3 months of orders packed, and today we got our PPP money funding, so thank God, so I can put the other people back to pay. So that was great news. But that's, 8 weeks, and then what's going to happen? And it's really challenging, how do you deal with situations like that?
Yeah. By the way, congrats on the PPP. Was that, were you trying to get the first round and had difficulty?
Yes.
What do you think? It's interesting. Today I announced that the success in California, we're getting 3 times as many loans in this state than we did in that first round. And you're another proof point in that. What do you think changed? I'm just curious. What did the banks or whatever, the credit union, however you were able to procure the loan, what did they say was the secret sauce at this time?
It went very fast. When I talked to my banker, they didn't have any control. It went to SBA directly, so he couldn't say, yes, it's here, it's there. But I think that what happened, they realized that on the first go around, they help, I don't want to say the wrong companies, but they help companies that maybe didn't need it, and the whole purpose of this is to keep the employees out of unemployment and to have something. In my world, it's great because I can bring them back, start doing face masks, we'll donate them, so I can keep them productive. You want to keep them productive and not sitting at home, collecting unemployment and wondering what's the new norm for all of us. You want to get everything rolling again. And that's what's hard. But I think that the SBA and the banks, they got the message, hey, we need to work with the small companies that need it the most.
I love that. Everything you said, I appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor.
Thank you. And Jesse, you work for a small startup, mom and pop, which obviously tongue firmly in cheek. Jesse, this is, there's companies and there's the company, Jesse, you're working for. Tell me how things have been going there. How's the morale? How you feeling about things? What are folks talking to you about?
Well, when this first started and you put the shelter in place, and thank you for letting me be part of this today. When you put the shelter in place, we are, as Will is, we are part of the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers too, and I'm a chief shop steward out there. So I represent about 600 members out there. We have a total of about 1,200. But when this was put into place, we went home, I believe it was that Monday, and then we got a phone call just saying not to come to work, in which we didn't report to work on Tuesday. Maybe about 10% of the workforce did. And then we all sat around, and I was in constant contact with the company throughout that time, on the phone with either the union, my rep, or the company, the HR, and said, just keep holding on. We're expecting another phone call. And sure enough, we got another phone call to come back to work the next day. Well, we got back to work and so much uncertainty and people wondering what's going on and why are we back into work and What are we doing? How are we going to be safe working here? And within that week's time, our company announced that with the CDC guidelines, that everybody would be afforded that would fall under a CDC guideline, 80 hours of COVID pay, which means that even if you felt uncomfortable being at work, that you could actually go ahead and apply for this and be granted it without even any questions. And I think it got out of hand within the first week and a half. You know, there was we make up about 40%, I believe, of the workforce out there. And I think in the first week and a half, there was only about 10% of the workforce left. It was like a skeleton crew out there. Everybody just got up and ran because they were scared. We came back to work. We had no idea of what we were up against, except hearing what was going outside. We were afforded no kind of a PPP at that time, mainly because I believe the company could not make it mandatory because they just didn't have the PPP to give us. And so I was one of the workers that actually stayed there because it seemed to me that everybody going outside at one time and then coming back in, that's what the unknown is when they were going to come back in. Well, as of today, we're practicing social distancing. We work in a very large machine factory, so we can practice that because our machines are very, very large. But then it's also very hard to practice it when you have to work with individuals like engineers or quality people. And we wanted to know, you know, since they told us we need the social distance, so what do we do when we need to work with people? Then they kind of like said, well, just be as careful as you can be. And this is, we have people out there that don't want to be there. We've had people out there that haven't even returned yet. For whatever reason, you know, they're just using every time they can get and being granted because they don't feel like they're coming back to work, or maybe someone's sick at home, or they have to take care of the children or something like that. We have people out there that have wives that have cancer, and they've been gone for a month and a half, 2 months. So as of this week, they finally came out and said it was mandatory to wear masks. And with that, you asked about the morale is just up and down. I think a lot of people would feel like they don't want to be there, but financially wise, they have to be there. You know, I feel for a lot of people out there that are not working today, you know, and how they're able to make it and what we're going to do to bring those people back in and make it safe for everybody that's coming back into the workforce. I just think that's a great big challenge out there. Or what are we going to do? There's people out there that says we should be afforded tests. We all know what the word is on tests, you know, and what they do. I think they've talked about it, but they've done nothing about that. You know, it's just a real mixed feeling out there, and trying to work with these people. And I work closely. My union rep works closely with us. You know, thank God we are union. Let me put it that way, because I really believe that, you know, having union out there, we have a voice, and that's what makes us be heard. And I really believe that the factories out there that don't have unions as of today, they need to get their leaders together. They need to get their managers together. They need to get the ones that are on the floor that are leading and get them all together and decide how they're going to do it when they bring the people back in. So, and try to make the people feel safe. There's been communication constantly from the VPs back in Baltimore to the VPs here at work. We've had constant communication with them, but like I said, you talk about morale, there's some people that are just mad, angry, not knowing what to do, expect. We feel like we're a time bomb waiting for this virus just to go off, and it's going to hit us sooner or later. We have had no incidents out there that we know. We've had some people get sick, but so far we're doing okay. You know, we have a good crew out there. We have a lot of workers out there. They just announced today that they have about 60% of the people that are doing telecommuting work out there, and they're going to bring back starting off in phases. And they only shared phase 1 with us, that bringing back about 44 people who they believe are not being able to be as productive as they should be, that are at home and working from home.
Interesting. Hey, Jess, how was when the mandatory mask policy went in effect? Was that well received under the circumstances, or not?
Well, yes. I don't think people have a problem with wearing masks. Some people have had some issues with this and that, but The problem I see is that when the company brought it out, the management says, well, I have masks, so if you need one, ask me for it. And they're handing out cloth masks. Now, mostly everybody's brought masks from back home, but when they made it mandatory, of course, our stance is that if you're going to make it mandatory, we need to have this done. They should have made it mandatory from day one. They should have made something mandatory, at least to say a face covering or anything that you can bring from home at this time until we can be able to supply masks for you. They didn't do that. So that that as far as I also thought what they should have done was that when this all started, it seems to me that when they had this 80 hours that were available to the employees out there, is maybe they should have shut the place down and just brought a crew in and just disinfected the place. And we asked to have more disinfectant stations, put in there, so people have hand sanitizer available to them. They don't have to walk from one side of the plant to the other side. We also agreed to allow them to bring contract janitors in to help us out. And to tell you the truth, it's been real hard to keep up. We've a lot of complaints about the bathrooms not being clean like they should be out in the shops. We are a big shop out there. We do work with a lot of metal, so it's not clean, but I think a lot more probably could have been done, but I understand that it's the unknown. I understand that what we're faced with is something we've never been faced with before. And, probably this right here will make us more prepared if it ever happens to us again, to know what to do. Yeah.
No, I appreciate it, Jess. Thank you. And speaking of metal, Marcello knows a thing or two, at least about steel. Marcello, how you doing, and how you feeling about your capacity to get through this, and what have you been? Give us a sense of the last couple of months and where you think we're going in the next few months.
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Congrats for the initiative. CSI is facing, I would say, a long period of time of a challenge. Started with the Section 232, which I would say limited our ability to bring slabs here, which is our raw material. That's the business model that we have been running for 35 years after we assumed the assets of Kaiser Steel. And by said that, we were doing good. We adjusted. We are able to have, I would say, a healthy financial situation. So we are prepared to face the moment. And I think we did very good decisions at the beginning of that process. In day one, we implemented a crisis committee composed by the executives, HR, plant protection, communication, and as well as the doctor of Kaiser Permanente. Kaiser Permanente runs a family health center on site at CSI. So every day we meet at 7:30 a.m. to make the decisions, understand what's the overall scenario. And in day one, we have all of the key people in the operations, as well our, I would say, doctor, to share what was happening outside and helping us to define procedures and criteria to implement internally. So in the first moment, we decided, okay, who doesn't need to be here, we are sending home. Let's work, do home office. We don't have laptops for everyone, probably less than 1/3. So let's take your desktop home. Just take it with you. So it was interesting. So in the first moment, we decided to buy masks. So we had a stock of masks, dust masks to use. And you ask if there's some reaction about that. In the first moment was because the idea of wearing masks sound as it's more severe and drastic than everybody would thought, right?
Yeah.
But after that, the people got used with that, so it was no stress at all. And maintaining the social distancing, sanitizing, cleaning, and probably in the third week, we adopt to do the temperature checks at the gate.
Interesting.
Yeah,
By the way, Marcello, did that go over well, or are people more panicked when you started doing that?
no, actually, it was very good. People felt very safe with all of the measures that was taken. And one, I would say, very key element that we did a daily communication.
Yeah.
Even if nothing changed, we issue a communication daily basis. So everybody was waiting to see it. That's interesting that one day we decided, okay, nothing changed, so let's skip today. And people start to be worried. What happened that we didn't receive? Don't worry, we are going to do
Interesting.
that. And
It's funny you said it's exactly what Jesse and Will were saying, just the importance of that communication with your frontline staff. That's great. Good for you.
yeah, another thing I believe it was important that we create a kind of a special paid personal leave. So people that couldn't work at home and were not able to leave their children or a relative at home, we granted a special PPL, which basically all of every day that they took the special PPL would count only with half of the vacation time. So the company would assume half of it and the employee would assume the other half of it. And it was very well received as well, because we could accommodate people that couldn't come work because the schools shut down. We have a family back home and all of those things that have to be managed. Just to let you know, we are running much lower than our capacity, much lower, probably 40% of our capacity.
Yeah.
But we are maintaining probably from 70 to 100 employees in excess of our needs. And we decided to hold them there while we can, waiting for this more drastic period of time go through. So your initiative of bringing it back on the stage 2, it's very important. So the people starts to see with better hope the outcome of the situation. Of course, protecting the people's health and life.
No, I appreciate the sentiment, and I could see how, how deeply, it's not an intellectual exercise running a business, managing people, their families, their lives, and all the weight's on your shoulder to do the right thing and also just keep afloat. So I appreciate your comments, Marcello. Pamela, just, and everybody jump in now. I mean, as we start thinking through, and thank you all for your opening comments, what are you hoping for in terms of, obviously, some clarity to the extent we can provide it, our own frame of communication along the lines of Marcello, to keep people up to date and let folks in on our private conversations, make them public, so you have a better sense of where we think we're going. What else can we be doing to be helpful? And again, thinking about just the work that Dr. Angel, in particular, the Department of Public Health, has to do, because this is a health-led effort. We look at the data, we really track in real time what's going on, recognizing that there's variation all across the state. But what kind of, what advice do you have to her, to me, in terms of what we can do to be helpful to you as we roll out guidelines and we really try to navigate the next month or two as we hopefully move into a new phase still?
I think first would be to have really clear guidelines. I know for myself and many other small manufacturers, in the beginning when the guidelines were changing so often, that makes it really hard. I think everybody has the intention to be following the guidelines, but when there's county guidelines coming out, there's state guidelines coming out, it's tough. And especially if you're smaller and you don't have a lot of resources, most of the manufacturers in our state are actually under 10 or less. You don't have a lot of resources to actually make sure you're following everything. So not having it constantly shift. Let's set what the guidelines are. I'm not for highly prescriptive guidelines because we all have very different internal environments. So I think we need clear guidelines backed by data, backed by science. What do we need to do to bring workers back and keep them safe? That's my biggest priority, is to make sure everybody can return to work in a safe environment. But as I think Will was talking about, manufacturing is very collaborative. When we've got a new setup on the machine and you're working on the tooling and the programming and setting up a machine, very hard to do that like digitally. I mean, you really have to have 2 or more people standing at the machine working on the tooling and the setup to get that machine going. So there has to be a way we can figure out to do this safely. And we're going through all the guidelines. We're sanitizing, on the regular basis. Every machine center has the 6-foot radius marked off on the floor. We're doing all of those type of things. But there are certain things to consider when we come back. Same thing, our lunchrooms, we can't use our lunchrooms as lunchrooms anymore. There's not enough room in there for social distancing. We're gonna have to put, tables around the outside of the facility. We're lucky. I mean, we've got fairly good space. I'm 100,000 square feet. So we can put them at edges or put them outside, but it's those type of things that are going to have to change. I think it's more like the flow of work has to change when people come back. In the elevator, you can only have one person. In the lunchroom, you can't eat lunch anymore. You can go in and out, put your food in there, but you can't stay, you can't stay in there. But really clear guidelines that help us get people back to work, really know what we need to do to keep people safe. And, and I'm with Marcello. I mean, we're doing a lot of communication. I just did a poll with my team today. They're itching to get back. And I was asking, how many of you really want to get back? And they want to get back to work. They miss having the socialization. I think it has changed things to a certain degree. I think there's some people that have enjoyed being home. Others, school and lack of daycare that's a big stressor. And I think that's the other thing to think about as we open up and we bring employees back. What are we doing to help support them on the family care side, on the education side? Because as many of them want to come back to the workplace, it's now a challenge if you have children that can't be in daycare or no longer in the school system. So that's another consideration. We have had a bit of a challenge for us at a company our size, actually getting all the PPE and getting it at a price where it's not exorbitant.
We share that.
But we're actually buying enough to allow the employees who are coming on site to actually take it home if they need it to make their home safe. We're bringing food into them just to once again reduce their exposure and taking those type of measures as well.
I appreciate all that. And I appreciate the importance of taking care of the workers means helping support their families and all the related needs. Tom, I want to turn it over to you. Tom, I know you're working across every sector with this large team of experts in many different fields, but you're also talking a lot about the future and reimagining the future and new business processes, new business practices. And I'm curious, Tom, just your thoughts and any questions you may have of the group, perhaps even along those lines or even more broadly.
Well, I do think this has been incredibly revealing and important to listen to what you guys have to say. A couple things did jump out at me. One of them is so much, and I think the governor's brought this up several times, and so has everybody else, about communications in terms of people understanding clearly what's going on. And let me ask you a question. Do working people understand not just the rules, but how impactful each individual rule is? Because I know that we're going to come up with, those clear guidelines that Pam was asking for. But for people to follow them and understand them seems to me to be an important part of this, particularly down the road, that people understand why wearing a mask is so important. Is that something where you feel like working people and supervisors really understand the different impact of social distancing and masks, cleaning the equipment and workflow? Because maybe that's something that would make it really ingrain it more.
I would say in my case, our employees are very used with the fact of safety first. So I think they understand the importance. And as I mentioned, that the only reactions are reactions on the new thing, like use a mask. Oh my God, that's very different. But once they understand why and they are convinced, I think it's very easy to adapt to the day by day and accommodate. For example, using masks were kind of foggy on the glasses, right? It's a PPE. So, okay, why don't you bring a different one? Use an old T-shirt as part of your mask, or do a combination. So they did that. So I think it was a great success, and I think overall people will follow all of the good instructions that they understand the importance behind it.
Yeah, I believe that where we're at work, as far as the communication goes and the safety, I think the people, once we started wearing masks this week and made it mandatory, I think they were more relieved. I really believe that, before this, when they weren't making it mandatory and some people were wearing masks and they were offended by other people not wearing masks and not respecting their own safety. I really believe that the guidelines that need to be used coming back for the people coming back to work is it needs to come from one source, and apparently that's going to be our governor and what kind of guidelines he's going to put down. I think that makes it more simple. I think it really makes everybody feel that they're, that they have one source to look at and not too many other sources, and let the companies decide how they're going to do this and how they're not going to do this. We need you need to. I really believe you need to set those guidelines out there, and we need to follow them, and we need to just follow them for a long time. Our people out there respect each other. As they said, it's in manufacturing, it's really hard to work alone all the time. There's always jobs where you have engineers, quality, and we have multiple people out there working with us, and that's a concern for us. And then respecting that social distance, it's not always possible. So I really believe, I hear from the outside, even my own kids, that my daughter told me last night, she says, I've been home, I've been working in this space right here, and I'm in my own little bubble, and I'm safe. I feel safe. And then when I have to get out and go to work, and I have to get some materials that I need, it says I come home and I just can't wait to get out of my clothes, take a shower, wash everything, and disinfect my whole body. So it's going to be very important that somehow we make the people feel that they're safe, and that when they're coming back into the workplace, that there's a set of guidelines that everybody is going to follow. That means everybody, not just whoever. It's just going to be everybody. We all need to follow the same guidelines.
Appreciate that.
I think
Will?
too, as we go back, I think, and we look to the future of work, I think in order to stagger people, create different shifts to maybe space people out, I would really love to see our state move from an 8-hour day to a 40-hour week in terms of the wage orders. Especially with the kids at home and the schooling. It's my youngest workers. Many of them are my labor workers. They're really the ones who want to see more flexibility in their scheduling. And that would really help manufacturing deal with this scenario and just the way work in general is being done going forward.
It's interesting. Will, any thoughts on this as well?
Yes, at the facility that I work at, we spend a lot of time at our facility in respirators. So the transition to the mask wasn't really a big one. Everybody really got on board. We understood what we were up against, and so we really didn't have that big of a problem in our facility. And so we adjusted very well. I just believe that going forward, with bringing manufacturing back online, we definitely have to have some clear expectations for employers when it comes to safety, because that's the part that we're going to get burnt on, is the safety aspect of bringing more people into the workplace. We're running a skeleton crew right now. We're running like 4 operators on each shift, and we run four shifts, graves and days. And but once you start bringing more people, and I'm just talking about production, I'm not talking about the engineering department, our maintenance department, our quality control, our research and development. When all of those folks get back into the plant, that's where it's going to get really challenging. So you got to have clear instructions for employers to follow, or we're going to put our workers at risk.
I appreciate it. Susanna, I saw Priscilla pop back up, which suggests she may be a timekeeper here, but I want to make sure, Susanna, you get a chance to jump in before we transition.
One thing that unless I missed it, that no one has talked about is the mental health of the employees. What's going on at home, what's going on with their family, with their spouse, with their kids, dealing with the Zoom classes at home while they have to deal with the Zoom meetings, and what are we doing as employers to support that part of bringing them back working? Are they worried about this? How are they doing as humans? How are we dealing with all of this besides the work?
I love it. Thank you what a wonderful way to end, just on that foundational point. We are not widgets. We are human beings, all of us, that have different dates of manufacture as well, different ages, different in every way, shape, or form. But I really appreciate this conversation, your insight and expertise, all of you. And Tom, I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, or Ann, but again, deep gratitude to all of you. And it's very helpful just to have our health director here and to be able to listen in on this conversation in particular. And I think putting that punctuation point on brain health at the end was a particular point that otherwise would not have been emphasized had we not had this opportunity. So I really personally thank you for that. But Tom, Ann, do you have any closing thoughts?
Look, I think this call says a lot about what the governor's doing and about the future of California, because we're pulling together people, union workers and business owners, people from government, and really forging a new way of thinking about the future in California and about employment and growth. A really responsible new coalition of thought that I think Governor Newsom is really leading, and that I think is going to be really important going forward as we really rebuild California in a new way. And I just think these conversations are so valuable, and I think it's emblematic of what I'm hoping happens. And I think that Governor Newsom has been pushing really hard, and I think we should all be really proud to participate in this. I know I am. I'm really looking forward to the process of getting back to not just full employment, but in a new and better way.
Yes.
I appreciate that, Tom. Ann, are you still on there?
Just a really big thank you to everybody. I think that we learned everything. We were taking careful notes as you were talking. And I think that one of the takeaways I hear all of you saying is the ideas about best practices. I was, furiously writing down. And I think, where Pam started us, which is, even when we want to do best practices, there are some things that are set. Our machines are set in a certain place. Our processes are set in a certain place. That was a really helpful framing for me as I thought about manufacturing. And then I think the other piece that was really evident is not only do you want to make sure that people in fact are healthy, but they also feel healthy and they feel respected and they feel that they have the information they need. And that was really evident for what Will and Jesse said. So I think as we do this guidance, as a work with Julie Sue and Sonia Angel and others, is that we want to make sure we provide good guidelines, but also highlight best practices of what really works for employers, and workers. So I just say thank you, and we will take all this in as we're doing the work that we hope to do on all of your behalf, and really, really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, grateful to all of you. Thanks so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Governor,
Thank you.
for keeping us
Thank you,
safe.
Governor.
Thank you.
Thank you.